want to welcome everyone to the 6th installment of the A&A Legacy Series, in which we get acquainted with the legends, heroes, and icons of the numismatic hobby. I'm your host, Barbara Gregory, Editor-in-Chief of the Numismatist magazine. This evening, we are so pleased to welcome two special guests, Mark Salzberg, Chairman, and Rick Montgomery, President of Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, headquartered in Sarasota, Florida, with offices in Munich, Shanghai, and Hong Kong. Mark joined the grading service in 1988 at the invitation of NGC founder John Albanese. Rick signed on with the company in 2002, and today, NGC is the largest third-party grading service in the world, with more than 37 million coins certified as of February of this year. Mark Salzberg was born in Flemington, New Jersey in 1962. At age 7, he became interested in numismatics. He dealt in coins before accepting the job at NGC. In 1999, he co-founded Certified Collectibles Group, which replicates the coin grading model for comic books and paper money. Under the CCG umbrella are 4 additional companies: Paper Money Guarantee, Numismatic Conservation Services, and Certified Guarantee Company and Classic Collectible Services, which grade and conserve comic books. In addition, CCG's companies grade and authenticate a variety of evocative items, including vintage photographs, concert posters, and movie lobby cards, which is one of my favorite collecting areas. Also born in 1962, Rick Montgomery grew up in Ivyland, Pennsylvania. Like Mark, he began collecting coins around the age of 7. He worked for the American Numismatic Association Certification Service, or ANACS, in Colorado Springs from 1980 to 1987. When he left for California to work for Professional Coin Grading Service, he was president of PCGS when he accepted the job at NGC in 2002. Collaborators and co-workers for more than 14 years, they have forged a meaningful partnership in numismatics and witnessed the evolution of the hobby and third-party grading. Welcome, Mark and Rick, and we're just so pleased you could join us tonight. So first, Mark and Rick, the two of you were born 3 months apart, grew up in the eastern United States, and were introduced to collecting at a young age. You share a lot of similarities, yet the two of you couldn't be more different. How would each of you describe your defining traits, and what do you see of yourself or admire most in the other person? And Mark, we'll start with you.
Well, we are quite different. I'm obviously hair, and I blend into the background here, but I would say, as an example, when I see a counterfeit gold coin, I know instantly that it's counterfeit for whatever reason, and Rick can tell you why. Rick happens to be the #1 authenticator in the world, probably, and it's really that's a real difference between us, where he's very precise and he can. He's very authoritative, and I'm more from the gut. But both of us love coins. Both of us really enjoy what we do every day, and it's been. I can't believe it's been 14 years.
Yeah.
When you said that, it's remarkable. And I think life began for Rick when he came over to NGC.
I agree. I look at things and I think of myself as fair and focused, driven and passionate about the craft that Mark and I do. And I see all those things in Mark and really so much more. This man is a wonderful businessman, a wonderful partner, just loves this hobby incredibly so. And he's also a great mentor to everyone on the staff. Tremendous individual.
Thank you.
Mark, you say you began collecting coins when a young girl gave you an Indian head cent. Why did she give you the coin?
Well, I was in Oyster Bay, Long Island, visiting a cousin, and we were walking down the street, and this little girl handed me a 1903 penny, and I have no idea to this day, but thank God she did. I brought it home, and I showed my dad, and he bought me the only book he ever bought me, which was on coins. And I remember looking through the book, and I would open a page randomly and close my eyes and put my finger on a page and dream about owning that coin. And you know, it's beyond my dreams what's happened. So I have no idea why she did, but I gave that coin to my son, among other things. And he gave it back to me one day for my 50th birthday, encapsulated in NGC. So we still have it in the family.
That's great. Rick, like so many young hobbyists, you began by filling Whitman folders of Lincoln cents and Jefferson nickels. What attracted you to coin collecting, and who encouraged you in this pursuit?
It was really just something that I gravitated to on my own. I discovered a penny board one time, a Lincoln cent board, and saw the spaces that need to be filled and took it as a challenge to try to figure out how do you do that. And I think that was what it was for me, was the drive to try to complete this particular collection of coins, and it spilled over into other series, and it went from there.
Did you have a mentor at the time as you got more and more involved as a youngster?
No, I really didn't. I was just a little collector out there, just doing his own thing, going to coin shops and small shows.
Mark, in an interview published in Heritage magazine, you mentioned that, quote, many successful collectors and dealers have had a traumatic upbringing, adding that they, quote, lose themselves in coins and find refuge in numismatics. I think that's a very interesting observation. Can you expand on that thought and perhaps give some examples?
Have you seen the crowd here? Well, I got to tell you, it's. I don't think anybody would disagree with me. I mean, what Rick said, that he didn't have a mentor, is unusual, because I had a tremendous influence by mentors. And you know, I remember being a kid and working at the coin shop and going to my first coin shows, and dealers were very kind to me. And I recall, like, Ed Hipps, Harlan Burke. They were just so kind. I'd ask a question. Leon Hendrickson, I would walk up and, you know, there's no way I could afford a 1795 10, but I would, $10 gold piece, but it's in his showcase. And I'd say, Mr. Hendrickson, can I see that coin? And he'd pull it out and tell me all about it. But in terms of people who have trauma, I think I think, you know, we don't want to talk about it, but for the most part, most of us found refuge in these wonderful artifacts and the historical aspects and the data behind it and the fact that we could make money at it. So it's energizing when you buy a coin and you can resell it for a profit. And when it's like golf, you can never learn all of it. You can never master. And I learn every day, and I love it. But you know, I think it's been a refuge for myself, and some of my closest friends in the business have had serious things happen to them. And you know, it's my experience in the other categories, the other verticals that I'm involved in, currency and comic books, it's very similar. There's very similar stories. I don't really understand why, just other than it's a refuge.
Well, your parents are Nazi Holocaust survivors, and your father was on Schindler's List. A Ukrainian family hid your mother for 2 years under the floor of their barn. How did their stories of survival affect you and the course of your career?
My dad and mom didn't really know how to raise kids. They didn't have the skills, but they would tell me stories at a young age, way too young, and I dealt with that trauma But they would tell me, one story resonated with me that I'll never forget it. The farmers that saved my grandparents and my mother, he would bring a pot of soup once a week, and my mother told me that he gave the farmer a $20 gold piece as payment for one of these times. And I always, naively, I was like, you can't comprehend it, so you just wonder. I would ask her, like, where is that 20, and how did he get that 20, and what is it worth? There's incredible questions that go with that. And then I learned, after my father got out of the camps, he traded $20 gold pieces in the black market, and he would somehow facilitate $20 gold pieces with and provide cash to certain agents, he called them. But I was able to tell this story at the Smithsonian, at the Legends of Numismatics, and my parents were in the audience, and it was incredible moment for me.
Rick, a turning point in your life came in 1980 when at age 17 you attended the ANA's summer seminar in Colorado Springs. How did it change your outlook and your interests and goals?
I think when I first went to the summer seminar, it really was eye-opening to me, the world of counterfeits. I took counterfeit detection course that year, and it was mind-blowing to me. But it sparked this interest in myself to want to know exactly what makes a coin real, and how do you use that to determine how a coin is bad. And from that came the evolution in my mind that, oh, here's a hobby that now can turn into a career and can be incredibly enjoyable, and so I started viewing it in that way as well, and it became very eye-opening for me.
Well, at the time, you were looking toward going to college, and ANA Executive Director Ed Rochette invited you to work for ANAX. What was your first reaction to his job offer, and what did your family think of your choice?
Well, of course, I jumped at the opportunity. I had in my mind, okay, I can take a passion of numismatics and I'll turn it into a career, or hopefully one anyway at that point in time. And I remember my dad saying to me, you can pay to go to college, or you can be paid to go to college. And I thought, well, that sounds like a really interesting choice. I would like to do that very much. And so right on the cusp of going to school, which another coincidence is Mark and I were both ready to go to Drexel University in Pennsylvania.
I went.
And so I didn't. I went to Colorado, and my only regret is that we weren't able to be there to found the first Drexel University Coin Club.
Oh my God, we would have gotten so much tail. I went to Drexel for 9 days, so there you go.
Mark, you were 10 years old when you met 13-year-old John Albanese at a garage sale.
Yeah.
A year later, he asked you to work with him in a coin shop. Who owned that shop, and where was it located, and how would you describe your relationship with John in those early years?
So my mom and I would read the local newspaper, and there was a little section for garage sales, and it said coins for sale. So we drove over there, and I walk up, and there's John sitting there with his big glasses, and he's got these great silver dollars. And I didn't know very much, but I knew silver dollars were $7 or $8. And with my mother, this little 5'0" woman who was just a bulldog. And so I said, "How much is that one?" And he said, $30. He says, "What the hell's wrong with you?" She starts arguing with him, and she says, "You're crazy." And they had this rapport, and they immediately fell in love. I mean, she just loved John, and John loved her, and John was way ahead of his time. Those coins are extraordinary, probably 7s or 8s. And he was a kid. He worked at Rab Coin Shop in town in Flemington, New Jersey. So I would go in there, and Randy Block owned the store, and I tell everybody he taught us how not to do business. It was unbelievable what he had in his place, guns and comic books, and it was just a Wild West. And we're these two kids who just love coins. And John was a gymnast. He was into gymnastics, and he was just like this idol to me. And he asked me to work there. And I would go in on the weekends, and they pay me, I think it was like $2 a day or something. But I didn't care, and I loved it. It was fantastic. Because I think today, if I had to teach someone, I would say work at a coin shop for 2 years. But back then, we had the ability to see original material. Things were coming over the counter. There was original rolls. And there was this, the knowledge wasn't, it was just starting. There was books that were being written on silver dollars. There was, it just wasn't as precise as it is today, or as much information. But for whatever reason, John had this ability to zero in on rarities in silver dollars. So we learned together that way. And I worked there for a year or so, a couple of years. And we just, from that moment on, we were buddies, brothers, really.
And so obviously that friendship led him to hire you at NGC, and obviously to a confidence in your abilities. So.
Well, it wasn't the path wasn't quite that
smooth.
Yeah. We went. I was buying and selling coins. So was he. When I was 15, I was making more than my teachers in high school, buying and selling. And he was really, really good at it. And it was just fortuitous that I had met him. But we would go to coin shows, and we'd have to get permission to get on the planes. We have to pay cash to get a hotel room. Back then, it was just but as I mentioned, mentors were so important to us. Ed Hips was crucial to our development, and the ability to see coins all the time. And Randy didn't really help at all. And he's a great guy in the sense that he helped us in our formative years and gave us a job, but he didn't move out of that town. He would go to coin shows in New Jersey. We traveled, and we wanted to know everything. We would see people like Jim Halpern and Steve Ivey and Kevin Lipton, and they were so successful, and we would dream about owning these coins. Back then there was original coins, and you had the opportunity back then, 30, 40 years ago. Can't believe it's 40 years, but.
Rick, during your 7 years at ANAX, you discovered your passion for collecting ancient coins, specifically tetradrachms of Alexandria, Egypt. Who introduced you to this field, and why do you find it so appealing?
Well, when I was there, Bob Hogue was the curator of the A&A Museum, and I was seeing these coins come through, and of course, I didn't have a great collection. I had a modest collection, but I was seeing so many of the same pieces, and I thought to myself, I would like to try to collect something that's different. And Bob sort of steered me towards the Alexandrian series, and it appealed to me again because they were coins of Roman rule, but they were written in Greek. The legends were in Greek, and they were dated, so I could actually still build a collection with, quote, dates on them. And he taught me the Greek alphabet and taught me the phonetics of it and all the numbers that equate to the different letters. And again, it became another challenge to try to build this collection from Tiberius to Domitian at the end of that regular rule of AD 20 to 300, basically, AD, and try to fill in the gaps, which is still not finished, but it's an enjoyable pursuit of mine still.
And so still?
Oh yeah, I still pursue it, and once in a while I call on my colleague over here, Dave Vagey, to see if he can locate me one, and so we still keep chasing them.
Oh, that's great. Mark, you told Heritage Magazine that you collect, quote, freaks of nature, coins that shouldn't really exist. What is it about such coins that intrigues you?
I've had the good fortune of looking at millions of coins that I get paid to look at. Bought and sold tremendous rarities, and when something comes across my desk that I haven't seen before or that kicks me in the stomach, it takes a lot at this point. I'm cynical, and like I said, I've just seen it all. The National Collection and Hoards, the Newman Collection, I mean, you can go on and on. So when a coin comes across my path, like the 1864 2.5 that's up here, $2.5 gold piece, to me that's a freak of nature. It really shouldn't exist. We're talking about a coin that made toward the end of the Civil War. There's 2,824 of them. Coins of that era were used. The next highest grade is a 61. This coin is virtually perfect, and it's incredibly original from the Buy and Read collection, a Nebraska real estate magnate who finished collecting his coins in 1890 and donated them to the museum there. It was deaccessioned, and I was able to acquire it, but that typifies my collection. Another coin in there is a $1794, but you know, they're of course rare. This one happens to be probably the 8th finest known, but what's remarkable about this is the strike on this coin. There was only 1,700 or so made, but they're notorious for being weakly struck on the left side. This one is fully struck. Not only that, it's completely original and has a great provenance from the Parmalee collection. So that to me, even though it's not gem condition, it's gem circulated, it's gem in my mind, and that really is a remarkable item because it hasn't been cleaned, it hasn't been molested in any way, it's complete, it has all its integrity, and it has this great provenance. So that's the sort of thing I collect. And then with, again, David Vega, this legend that we keep talking about, he's helped me with ancients, and I have an ancient in here that really, how does this thing exist? It says the day it was made, Septimius Severus, a gold ori, and it's just unbelievable. Fascinated by that. So I don't have many coins in my collection, but what I do are all that kind of coin.
Among the 7 pieces that you brought with you this evening, is one of them your special favorite? You know, either here tonight or out of your entire collection?
I have a couple. The ultra high relief is a very, very special coin. There was less than 20 made. It was a prototype for $20 gold pieces made in 1907. Roosevelt wanted our coinage to look more ancient, more medallic, because it was boring. We had the 20 liberties before that, 1907 before the Lady Liberty or the Face of Liberty. So he pursued Augustus Humbert, foremost sculptor of the day, to gave him the task of creating new coinage. He did the 20 and he did the 10, and then he died, unfortunately. But the 20 was made with such high pressure and so many strikes that the die shattered. So the prototypes, there's only probably 18. There's a couple in the Smithsonian and impounded in other museums, and I'm just so fortunate to have one. And it's, to me, the most beautiful coin I've ever seen, the most beautiful design, and it's breathtaking. And the other great coin I have, and I've mentioned this in a couple other interviews, is I have an 1877 S trade dollar that I have given to my son that I bought in 1985. I traded for a dealer. I kept putting Krugerrands, maple leafs on the table until he sold it to me. And it took twisting his arm saying, if I ever have a son, I'll give it to him. That coin to me is the finest silver coin I've ever seen. And it's universally accepted as a Mint State 69. And it's beautiful. It's got the greatest patina. It's fully struck, it's rare. Again, it's something that shouldn't exist, but it's very special. It's really not in my collection, but I have first shot at it.
That's great. And just a reminder too to the audience that after the program, by all means come up and take a look at some of the pieces that Mark brought with him this evening. And I know he'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Rick, when you worked for the A&A Certification Service, Adna Wilde Jr., who was then ANAC's director and later A&A president, acquainted you with the business side of numismatics. What advice did he give you?
Well, Adna was a man of impeccable integrity, and he only further instilled in me to maintain the integrity and pursue and surround yourself with people of the highest integrity. Here was a guy who was in the high altitude fighting squads in the U.S. Army in World War II. He fought and captured many different Nazi regiments in the high Alps of Italy, and would tell me those stories as well. And he was an incredible man. He was straight-laced, straight shooter, and just a superb individual. He's a great person. And so he just told me, do the right thing, do always the right thing, and surround yourself with people of the highest integrity. And lo and behold, a little under 20 years later, I got to do just that when Mark invited me to join the company. So his advice was well heeded, and I appreciate him very much.
Both of you, in 1986, Professional Coin Grading Service introduced encapsulation, a better and more secure mousetrap, if you will, for grading and authenticating coins. Did either of you see that technology coming?
You know, for myself at ANAX, you know, our first concentration always was to authenticate the coin. And so we were not really so involved and deep into the commercial aspects of things. So really, for ANA and the ANAX, we didn't see the reality of what was to come there. So, you know, so I guess at one point in time there it was, you know, if you can't beat it, join it. And you know, that's where I ended up going at that point in 1987. But no, it's something I think that was probably seen too late, and a little bit of a surprise, I think, at that point.
I have to say I saw it.
Mark saw it.
I was dealing right out of, you know, from Drexel. I was living in an apartment there. I was buying and selling coins, and I became very good at the higher end, mainly generic type items, silver dollars, commemoratives, some gold, and I got a general range of knowledge. And then in '86, actually it was February 12th of 1985, I moved to Newport Beach, California, and I was buying and selling there. And there seemed to be really the epicenter. There was something going on there, and it was just one of the greatest times of my life. And I was in a position where I could see that there was just something developing. And I was sending coins to ANAX prior to that, but I was buying and selling raw coins, obviously, at the time. But David Hall was making a buy-sell spread on coins. And basically what he would do is, if he liked the coin, he would just sticker it. He would write you a check, and he had a buy. So you didn't have to negotiate. And I was selling him a lot of coins, and I was perfecting my eye. And then PCGS started, and John was one of the founders. John Alvarez was one of the founders. And I happened to be at the right place at the right time. So I would go to coin shows starting on the East Coast on a weekend and go all the way back and hit every show I could. And then I would submit to PCGS. And then PCGS hired me to be a grader, and I scored the best grade there for a period of time. John left and he said, hey, I'm gonna go back to New Jersey and start a new grading service. And I decided a few months later to move back to New Jersey. But what you could see was that it was taking the personality out of coins, not necessarily the personality of trading. It was an arm's length, third party, impartial service, and the sky was the limit, because and Rick touched on this. It's implied that the coin's authentic when it's in our holder, but it's also, we look at it for if there's a rim file, added mint mark, altered surface, scratches, hidden, tooling, engraving, any number of things. So, that's also alludes to what I was saying about young people today don't have the opportunity to see original coins. They have to see them in holders. Back then, I saw how this was becoming more of a vehicle and a comfort level for people to buy coins. So I could see that penetration in the marketplace. The other thing that I saw was that there was a consolidation. There was going to be a consolidation in the marketplace in terms of dealers and my ability to source coins. So I was going to compete with these dealers that were going to send to PCGS. And I was starting to run into that a bit, where I would buy a coin and I would say to a dealer, can I see your NUPs, new purchases? And he'd say, no, I'm going to send them to PCGS. And I was starting to get a little annoyed by that, but I was, you know, it was really just gold in the streets at the time, because there was big spreads of buying one coin here and getting it graded, and you know, there was a lot of activity and it was new. So I made the decision that I was going to join NGC. I was there grading a couple months, and then I joined in '88, January of '88, and it was the best decision I ever made, because that is exactly what happened. The consolidation happened. It took a tremendous amount of capital to be a dealer, and it also it got more and more difficult. And the coins flow to the grading services. So, you know, I saw that coming, but I didn't know how it was actually going to turn out. It was a good move.
Rick and Mark, do you feel that counterfeiting is on the rise? Does NGC feel an increased responsibility to combat that threat and create a safer environment for collectors?
I think, you know, counterfeits have been made since coins have been made. What we see today is maybe numerically we're not seeing any more, but we're seeing them in different areas. We're seeing them in coins that aren't necessarily the rare coins. We're seeing them on coins that are not necessarily the high-grade pieces. And that's becoming the new challenge for services, I think, across the board. And at NGC, of course, we feel it is the ultimate responsibility of us to make that decision right. Without the authentication part right, the grade really doesn't matter. So we understand that, and we are going to every length, technology-wise, to combat all these counterfeits and alterations that do exist, and you know, using all our resources that we can to beat it back.
You know, it's not only is it a responsibility that we feel in everything we do every day, it's a financial responsibility. I was in China last week, and I was meeting with some big customers of ours, and what resonates with them is the holder, the security, the seal of approval. Authenticity is foremost, and they'll go as far. And I say they. I don't know who's counterfeiting. It could be Chinese. It could be, you know, the Eastern Europeans. You know, it's they do the holder, they'll do the coin, they'll do everything. So we're constantly at the ahead of the curve. And as Rick alluded to, we are constantly looking for new technology, and we have found some incredible tools to help us there. But it's really a tremendous responsibility that we have, both grading services have, and we take it very, very seriously. It's a threat, and we see it every day. But you know, when you get coins that come over the counter at a coin shop, those kind of coins they're not a threat to us. What's a threat is the coins that we got an 84S dollar in a couple days ago, and the coin had the obverse of a CC, 84cc, reverse of a common estimate, but the luster was great. So if you're just going through it now, you wouldn't just go past an 84S dollar and not really focus on it, but they're getting better. The technology in those terms is getting better. The holder, is so there's other aspects. The holder is very important that we're watching out for. But this sort of theme is important across all categories. So currency and the comic books and of course coins and any other verticals we get into. And you see it in, the Chinese are keenly aware, and they want us to make sure we get it right. So we image every coin, and then we have an app where you can simply input that information or take a picture of the coin, and it brings up an image. So there you can verify, if you're in London, for example, to know that we graded that coin that you're holding in your hand. So there's many other things. And right now in our holder we probably have 40 different anti-counterfeiting measures, but we don't talk about them.
That's probably wise.
Yeah.
Since both of you began your careers as graders and authenticators, Do you mentor and advise the graders who work for NGC? And if you do, what are the most important tips you give them?
I think Rick is tremendous in the sense that he's just got this nice way about him that he teaches, and it's a fault of his really, because he sits in we have two grading rooms. One is World and World Modern, and then there's the U.S. World, U.S. Vintage and Modern. And I walk into his room, and he's got a line of people behind him. He's always talking to people, and he's giving them his input, and he's helping the graders out, and he's talking about why something is what it is. And I'm like, what are you doing? And I yell at the other graders because they're just bombarding them with this. But I sit at a table, and I have 3 or 4 people that I'm constantly training as well. And we have a deep bench, and we really focus on that because look at him, he's not getting any older, and forget about it. It's like 40 years of doing this. We have to have young people, and he's just tremendous at this. I'm more of I have less patience, I've been told, and if somebody doesn't get it, I kind of, and it's different. Some people you can beat up, and some people you have to have a kinder way about teaching them. But in general, I expect people to learn at a certain pace, and if not, they don't hang in there. But we have a great staff, and he's great at it. And also Scott Schechter is my sort of our right hand numismatist and great grader. He teaches as well. So and David Vega, again, we mentioned him. I'm getting tired of it, but he's just. I mean, if you want to know about something, if you want to, if you want to know what time it is and you have 45 minutes, he'll tell you how the watch is made, and he'll tell you how time was created. So.
Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, Rick?
Oh, I mean, sometimes I'll tell them, it's funny as coin graders, you get into such a routine with these things sometimes, and you just say, just let the coin speak to you. And I'll tell them someday maybe you'll be a coin whisperer too. So it's just like, it's just a matter of, it's repetition, it's concentration, and it's just this focus that you have to do in order to get these decisions right. You have to be accurate and you have to be consistent, but how do you do it? Over and over and over again. It's like any other craft out there. You have to just do it repeatedly to do it right.
And some of the things that we have as far as technology, a coin will come in and you'll be able to see the different diagnostics on a grader's computer. But yeah, I mean, what Rick said is really important. When we teach, whether he's teaching at seminars or I'm teaching in our office in China or in the US, some of these guys, the rookie mistake is, you get that coin right here and you start looking. But really, it starts here, and you have to have consistency, and you have to absorb that coin. You have to get an impression, and that's very, very important to get that first impression, and then you can start deducting or adding. But some people are at different levels, so you have to know, where to really focus in on.
Well, Mark, even today, you spend the bulk of your day in the business of numismatics. In fact, from the beginning, your job titles have always included grading finalizer. Is this, do you think, is it a necessary evil? Is it a control issue, or do you just really love the process?
Yes.
Yes.
I love grading. I know it's crazy, but I love sitting there. I'll go through a bag of dollars, and it's like a Zen experience to me. And I'm good at that. I guess I graded eggs. I grew up in an egg farm. I had to mention that, right? So, we just, packed eggs, and I just have this kind of work ethic that my parents instilled in me. But I love being in the middle of things, and I guess I want to make sure they're going right, and I want to see what's coming through. But I now find myself walking around quite a bit and going to the different departments and going to the different categories. When we started comic books, for example, it was very important for me to duplicate the model from a business point of view. I wanted to prove that we could duplicate NGC's model, and which included a holder, the guarantee, the imaging, a standard that was acceptable in that industry. And it took a lot of political effort as well to make sure that everybody understood. I could also, I just love the aspect of dealing with people. We have a great staff, we have great people, we have probably close to 300 people now in Sarasota and worldwide. So to me, it's I just love that we've grown, and we have people there that have been there 25 years. They get married, they have kids, they buy houses, their kids go to college. I mean, Ken Craw came on board, who's talk about a genius. I mean, we actually literally have some geniuses that work for us, like David Lang and
You're going to mention that guy?
No, I'm not going to. But so Ken Craw came on board 28 years ago. Great numismatist, world expert. He had Nathan, his son. Nathan went on to win the San Francisco Marathon. He's going to get a PhD in. He's going to be a doctor. I mean, there's these people it's extraordinary to be surrounded by these individuals in every category. It doesn't mean if they're an expert or they're answering the phones. It's just it's been a great experience to have that kind of ability to reproduce the model, duplicate the model over and over and over. And we're changing things, as I've said, across the globe. And it's a big responsibility. So when Rick's talks about authenticity, that affects everything we do, because a piece of technology can affect how we look at currency and how we analyze if something's been done to a comic book. And then if we get into other verticals, which we definitely will, we're gonna adopt those technologies.
Well, Mark, you're a diehard collector, and you pursue a variety of different interests, from Impressionist paintings to California arts and crafts to coins and fine wines. In your interview with Heritage Magazine, you stated, "Can't keep everything, can't own everything." Do you have any regrets about items you've passed up or parted with?
Yeah, I do. I have a couple regrets, but in order to get where we are, you have to buy and sell. And I was telling someone up here about the ancients. I part with a few ancients because I want to learn. Everything you buy and you sell, you learn. You retain that. You also learn from your mistakes. So one of the things I sold was a $17.99 $10 gold piece. It was the finest I've ever seen. And the more that I learn about U.S. coinage, the early gold coins to me are just so extraordinarily rare and beautiful. So to find something that's in gem condition, I parted with it, and that's something that I regret. But for the most part, I'm a hoarder. I don't really sell a lot of things, but I move on. I try to stay focused, but then occasionally I'll shift to something. And right now I guess the medication's working, so I'm kind of like, I'm not doing very much except adding an ancient here and there.
Would the two of you describe yourself as nerds? These days, the designation is almost a badge of honor. And I wondered how, if the nerd mindset has influenced your direction in life.
I mean, he's a nerd for sure.
Just look at us, right? I mean, really, I think the word nerd anymore means somewhat of expertise. I mean, a nerd to me is now someone who's so focused and so laser focused on one particular subject that by default they become an expert in it. So I guess, that's the badge of honor we wear. But yeah, I guess being a nerd is okay. Maybe, I don't know for you, Mark, if it's a great thing.
I don't think it's negative. I mean, I think I'm surrounded by nerds. I mean, we love this stuff, and you either have the gene or you don't have the gene. I have the gene. My kids don't have the gene, which is really crazy to me. They don't collect anything, which is bizarre. But I think we can relate on so many levels on the things that we are fortunate enough to have come into our lives. So it's been, the things that I collect, I find across each category there's a similarity that people love. They're passionate, and passion is, what else do you have if you're not passionate about these things? And we respect it. We respect what we're doing, and it affects people's lives, and it's something to be proud of. When it comes to wine, I've made so many great relationships through wine, and it lends itself to how my mind works. I'm mathematically inclined, and so I can remember the dates, and it's just the same stuff as coins. So, I bought and sold wine for a while there, and it was fun. But there, in each category that I find, and again, I'm limiting those now, is just people are passionate about it.
Along those lines, do you believe collectors are born and not made?
I think collectors are born. I think we all have that same collector gene in us. That's my own experience, and it seems to be the experience of a lot of collectors I've met along the way. It's something that's within themselves, and they just can't help themselves. Call it a defective gene if you want, but I think it's just something that drives me, and I like to collect and try to build these different types of sets, especially in that ancient world. But yeah, I think it's a born gene myself.
Yeah, I agree.
Rick, like many successful numismatists, you began collecting coins as a child. As such, do you believe the hobby needs to find new ways to attract young people? Is that a greater challenge these days than it once was?
It sure seems like it is to me. Yes, I think you're in a world of instant gratification, and the kids are on their cell phones and they're doing their video games. We don't have a superhero for coins yet, but I'm willing to nominate Mark for it. But it's true though. There's just it's a difficult time to get young people interested in coins, it seems, unless there are those that have that desire and are willing to spend the time to try to build a collection, even if it's just a Lincoln cent collection or a Kennedy half collection. It's just something to what's that desire to do that. But I think it's hard. You're up against a lot of competition with today's technologies.
And Mark, you helped create the U.S. Mint's Hip Pocket Change program to spark children's interest in coin collecting. With today's technology consuming more of young people's time and attention, is it harder to ignite that passion for numismatics? And what do you feel is the key to doing that?
We were just invited to a conference at the U.S. Mint. Rhett Jepson put it together, the Deputy Mint Director. We traveled up there to D.C., and that was the main question was, how do we get young people interested? Because the Mint's sales are declining. And one of the great ideas that came out of that, and several of the people that are in this room were there, one of the great ideas that came out of it was a reissuing of type coins in the base metal that you have today. So for example, you'd reissue an Indian head penny in copper, or a buffalo nickel and nickel, and it would be in change, and kids could put those sets together, or there could be an app that you complete by collecting all those coins, and this is one of the ways that you could build a collection that literally will just cost you change. The coins lend themselves so well to the internet, and the technology's there, but it's a real challenge. But we're trying to do everything we can to build tools for not only the collectors in the United States, but in China, for example. And I keep mentioning China because they're such a powerful nation. Everyone's talking about them, and they're young, and everybody's mobile. They're on their mobile app, and they love collectibles, and they're going to run out of coins. So, for example, you take pandas. They make 10 million this year. 5 million will leave China, and 5 million will be dispersed to 300 million people who want them. I mean, we make 44 million silver eagles here. There's something has to give. And they really want coins, they want collectibles, they want stamps, they want currency. So I really truly believe that we have to think globally when it comes to this. And you know, this hip pocket change program was an idea that really coupled an image of a coin. Take an 1862 copper nickel penny. If you show that to a child, you show them the image, and you say, this is what happened during the Civil War. This is why it was made out of copper nickel. This is what it could buy. And you download a module to teach them. You know, that's actually works. That actually is being downloaded every day. But you know, we can only do so much. The ANA is striving to do things every day. Kim Kick has made a great effort to bring in people that will have good ideas that can you know, bring up people in the hobby. The PNG did something with interns, and we had them come to the office, and I think we even hired a couple of them.
Several.
And you know, they went from Heritage, or they went to Stax, and they went to different organizations, and they got an education. I would do more of that. It's just that we have so much we're doing right now, but you know, before you know it, you know, the guys that we have, like I said, on the bench who are 28 will be 38. I mean, we just have to do this. It's important to the health and the sustainability of our hobby.
Well, we'd like to pause for a moment here and ask if the audience has any questions for Rick and Mark. And we have a microphone available here, so if you just want to raise your hand, and our Amber will deliver a microphone to you. So any questions here?
Thank you. I've enjoyed the talk very much. I wonder if you could talk about the grading process just a little bit, and how young are the eyes of the graders, and as the coins come across, how long does it take to grade a coin?
The coins are received, and then they're barcoded. They're opened under cameras. They're barcoded, and they're placed in a box for each individual order, so they're anonymous. They're brought into the grading room, and they start with one of the 3 or 4, we call them first base. That process, let's call it, they have 5 coins, takes them a few minutes. It's all recorded. They can put in notes. They put in their grade, and then it's stacked up and passed over to another grader who does the same thing, and then it comes to myself or Rick or Scott Schechter or one of the finalizers. We put in our grade as a consensus grade. Then it's taken to and matched with the invoice, brought into the encapsulation room, encapsulated, brought back to a QCer who will do quality control, make sure that label matches, the information is correct, and that the coin looks correct. And we do that about 12,000 times a day.
And one of the things that's important for us are the conditions in the room. So we work in a darkened room with only an incandescent light over each station. And so everybody has to work in the same environment. And again, we're striving for consistency. That's what our company is all about. And so we have to have the conditions remain the same across the board. And speaking of the young eyes, plenty of people in their 20s, but you have us. And but you know what? I'm always told by the eye doctors, the more you use them, the better they are. They're like a muscle, like anything else. And so you keep looking at coins, you're going to be just fine. So, and I think that's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do the graders know the grades along the process, or is it all not?
Yeah, our system allows the grader to see what the grader before him graded it. You could have a different system one in which I think our competitor uses where it's blocked off. To me, that just doesn't feel comfortable, and it's not what we did right from the beginning. And I think it helps with consistency. But it takes, as a finalizer, and I think Rick can speak to this as well, is that, sometimes you'll get a out to lunch grade, let's say. Something where I'll pick it up and I'll go, this is gem, and I'll get a 63 on it instead of a 65 or 66. So it takes a lot of concentration to not grade that coin 64 because somebody graded 63. So I'm constantly making sure that I think about the next grade, or if it's ugly, if it's an unattractive coin, thinking maybe we're grading this too high. You never really get in trouble grading a beautiful, fresh, pretty coin with great flash. You never really get in trouble with those kind of coins, but you get in trouble with the dark coins. So, every coin's unique, so it's a difficult, very difficult task. I defy anybody to come into our room and take a box of 20 coins, and you'll find any manner of any kind of coin in there, a gold dollar from Dahlonega, you'll get, a clean Kamem, you get a proof gold coin, you'll get, Sir Copper, and you lose your mind. It takes a lot of concentration, and that range is something that, we have specialists. Like Rick has incredible range on US, but colonial, he's federal grade, colonial coins, he's terrific. World coins, I mean, his body of work is significant, but that took decades and millions of coins to examine. So we don't have the luxury of stopping every second and throwing the coin to someone. So I think by having that system, people can learn through that system.
It is a teamwork-based system, it really is, and it does allow for immediate feedback. If you have a system where the grades are blocked off, as a finalizer, we wouldn't really know what the prior person called it. The computer's assuming the grade, whereas we can see it. And if someone is way off, like Mark said, they're out to lunch on a grade, we can flip it immediately right back to them, and they can get that instant feedback, which of course only contributes to them getting better over time.
Thank you for a great presentation. When I'm sitting at home grading a coin or trying to grade a coin, what do you recommend for magnification, and what do you recommend for lighting?
Well, Mark said it earlier. The first thing that I do, and I know Mark does, is I just hold the coin out at a distance and get an immediate feel for it. And sure, we're honing in the grade, but at least we're getting the entire essence of the coin. And that's really, right there is the immediate impression. And from there, you rotate it, you're looking at it, judging the luster if we're talking about a super high grade coin, rotating it and trying to identify any issues on it, and then come the deductions or additions that you will make. For me, I don't know if it's just because of the millions of coins I've looked at and Mark's looked at, it's not like I pick up a loop on every single coin. In fact, it's at this point probably more on the rarity side than it is anything else. I'll use it when I'm seeing something and I want to judge, are those hairlines? Are they die polish lines? Is that rim really filed, or is that a typical gold rim on a 2.5 from 1907 that has these grooves on it? So it's those types of things that when I use a loop, my typical loop's a 7 power.
And one of the
And lighting.
Lighting, incandescent lighting. We use the standard overheads, typically 75 to 100 watt.
Yeah, I like 75 watt. And one of the things that I like to point out is that dealers have such a disadvantage to us, because we sit in the same condition every day, and we grade those coins in the same condition. And I don't have to worry about my inventory. I don't have to worry about my checkbook. I don't have to worry about, a dealer that's going to get to a deal before me. I'm looking in the same lighting. I slept in my own bed that night. I come in, I grade. And these guys have a challenge of different lighting every time, different auction settings, and they got to make a quick decision. And the holders, unfortunately, they get banged together. There's some scratches. I mean, it's a hell of a difficult job these guys have. So we're sensitive to that as well. And the collectors that aren't as, obviously have a good as eye as a dealer, they see things that are on the holder. They see things that are not there. We have to explain it sometimes, and it's a difficult task. So that consistency is highly important.
We have time for probably one more question. Do we have another question out there this evening?
I've got a two-part question. Over the years, we've seen some sensational hoards of coins come out. Would you care to comment on what might have impressed you of some of the hoards that have come out? And that would also include sea salvage coins, like Brother Jonathan, Shipwreck, some of the other shipwrecks. Are there any special considerations that are taken into consideration when you get a group of sea salvage coins?
I think on the sea salvage coins, the Central America was a good example of some wonderful pieces that came up. Brother Jonathan, you mentioned. They're just, when conserved properly, they're beautiful examples of what those coins look like virtually from the day they were made. The Central America is a really great example of that. We look at them through the lens of what should that coin look like, and we tried to grade it appropriately for that.
So SS Republic was discovered in 2007, and there was 5,000 gold coins, a variety of dates and denominations. Several omens. It was a 54O on that was found in AU 58, $20 gold piece, the rarest date, except for the 56O. But within that hoard, or within that shipwreck, there was no saltwater effect or shipwreck effect on the gold. Now that happens when there's silt going back and forth over the gold. And this was such a deep hoard that there really wasn't any movement and they were covered. So there really wasn't a problem in the sense that there was any pitting. However, that hoard or that group of coins had, we called it had a sort of a rose effect. It had this sort of different colored gold areas where copper was leaching out of the surface, because the seawater is a natural electrolyte. So you'd have this blotchiness. So we came up with a technique that's proprietary that removed that blotchiness, and we graded those coins, and they're all acceptable in the marketplace, and they were terrific quality. And you learn from these things as well. The majority of those coins were New Orleans. The ship was from New Orleans. There was 50,000 half dollars on board as well. Some of them were made by the Confederate Mint. So we did an analysis of the die characteristics, and this is where Rick can talk about it, because I don't know what the hell that is. So it's more of, they figured it out. It's, what a wonderful thing. But all of these things are not just simply the artifacts. They tell an incredible story. And we presently have the 2.0 Central America at our place. We have thousands of gold coins and 10,000 silver coins, which is public knowledge. And that story from those coins is remarkable, because you would think there's some estimate dimes in there. I'm not saying there is or there isn't, but you would assume there's jewelry, there's bars, and there's dust, and there's nuggets. So what is incredible about this is that the dust was picked up with new technology. There was nuggets that were picked up. There was bars, and the bars, you can see how these miners brought the dust in, brought the nuggets in, went to Kellogg and Humbert, got the bar made, it's stamped, it's got the fineness on it, the weight, and they took their cut on each side. The cut for assaying and their cut, that's where it comes from. So you see the vertical integration as well of commerce, because these guys sold you a tent after they made you the bar. and they sold you a shovel. So this is the other things that are the intangibles, or the things that we have the luxury and the good fortune of seeing every day. It's a remarkable thing when you get in Hoards.
Time for one more?
Yes.
Just wait for the microphone, that way everyone can hear you here.
Back in the 80s and 90s, there was some concern about grade inflation or gradeflation when the market was booming. And if the market is starting to pick up again, how are you going to deal with the temptation of gradeflation or market grading based on eye appeal?
Well, that's a multi-part question, but I contend, this gradeflation thing is supposed to be a negative and a hot topic, but I can tell you that, I'll give you a couple examples. So 1795 $10 gold piece out of the Pogue collection. John Albanese and I, young bucks, we didn't know what we didn't know, and we're grading 20 or so the greatest Pogue coins came in 1991. One of those was a 1795 10. Now, John handled one or two, and I handled maybe one, and this is super gem. This is like nothing we've ever seen. It's crazy. The coin is as made, 1795 10. And what do you call it? We called it 65. It equated to whatever the number was at that day, so it's a value component as well, but we graded it 65. I recently saw it 18 months ago, and it recently sold. I graded it 66 plus. Now, is that gradeflation or is that a learning curve? To me, it's a learning curve. And then I'll give you another example of a generic coin, 1927-20. So if you grade them like 1924s, they're going to be, you're going to look at them and you're going to see more marks than the 24, but they're really flashy. In the marketplace, they're accepted, and more of those will be gem, more of those will be accepted as 65s. So I get calls from retailers saying, these 27s that you're grading 64, I'd be happy with them as 65s. They're gems to me. That has a little bit of influence because that's the marketplace talking to you. Grading is a language, right? The 65 tells you what the coin should look like, and so therefore we adjust a bit. Now, this eye appeal is another component. When Albanese and Greg Holloway in 1985 were the market makers on raw coins, they liked dark original coins. The dealers in this room know that. And they would buy a barber dime that was dark as gem. And that was the market. So when we graded in 1987 and 88 and 89, we were grading darker coins. We would call them gem. Were we wrong? We were learning. We were probably wrong. The market told us we were wrong, so we adjusted. So, over the years, there's been a learning curve. There's been some loosening of the standard. I don't think our standard is going to change at all. We might tweak. We might change things a little bit on a more minor scale, a tenth of a point here or there or something. But in general, it's gone as far as it's going to go. But a lot of this is a learning curve. I know, people are going to say BS. It's not. This really is a fact. I have seen overgraded coins. We buy coins off the market. We make mistakes. We graded 37 million coins. Coins change in the holder. Things grow on the coin sometimes. That's why we started NCS. So there's a lot of factors here. The other thing is coins that have been in circulation in our holders tend to get little fine lines. When you reholder them in our scratch-resistant holder, which we developed, they look terrific. So there's a perception and there's reality, and that's how I feel about it. And I hope that answered your question.
Rick, did you have any comments on that?
I 100% agree with Mark. I do believe there's a big learning curve, and it's an educational process over time.
Well, I thank you all for your questions, and I have one final question for Rick and for Mark. Rick Montgomery, Mark Salzberg, in numismatics and in life, what would you like your legacy to be? And Rick, let's begin with you.
I guess I'll just go back to the beginning and say that, be fair, be focused, have a drive within yourself, and just be passionate about whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's in life or if it's in your career. Whatever you choose to do, just love it and just be extremely passionate about it. That to me is the secret to success.
And Mark, how about you?
Well, I feel like I'm in the sixth inning, and I think we're still burnishing our legacy. I think that, as I mentioned, duplication of the model of NGC within the different categories, different verticals, has really taught us that we can be a seal of approval on a lot of collectibles. And what that does is unlock the value of these collectibles and makes people comfortable as you talk about ancients or you talk about currency. With some categories, when we start grading them, many people feel comfortable. They start investing or they start collecting, and so we've been successful in these various categories. But we're doing that now across the globe, and so I think we're changing the landscape of how things are collected. And at the end of the day, if we can do that in a number of categories and increase the level of enjoyment and security, and I'm still having fun at this, and people respect me, and I respect myself. I think I'll be happy. My son is getting in the business. That makes me really happy. So he's less emotional and smarter than me. So I think we have the legacy will continue.
That's great. Well, I want to thank you both, Mark and Rick, and thank you all for participating in this 6th Legacy Series. And please, when we finish up here, come up and take a look at Mark's wonderful collection. And I know that Mark and Rick have something special for you as well. So please stay for a few moments. Again, thank you so much, and good night.